Hello and welcome of my review of the Imperial Knights Armiger Warglaives. This set of two models will cost you £45. Not too bad, in a way it's £22.50 each. You know that they're Armiger Warglaives and not Helverins, because the Helverins have these two Armiger Helverin autocannons, these really long autocannons that have a lot of shots, and the Warglaives have the thermal lances, big melter guns really, and the chain cleavers, little Reaper chainsword things. So I thought, even though I did a review of these two a few months ago when Forgebane came out, I thought with the 8th edition, hey, I'll do another review. And also, they've been improved slightly. They've got a different attack profile for the chain cleavers, which is great, and I'll talk about that later. So the kits themselves, beautiful kits, a fair few sprues, but you can build them both at the same time really. You can get stuck into them really quickly, and the parts are very obvious how they go together and which order. I've built the Helverins, which are similar parts apart from the autocannons, and they're really great kits. I'd love to get another two of these Warglaives. So they're not going to take you too long at all to build and finish, maybe a few hours if that, and then you've got two Imperial Knights, two of the smaller Imperial Knights for your Imperial Knight army, or just a little bit of reinforcements for another Imperial army. So the models themselves, you can have them, with the left foot forward, with the right foot forward. You can move their torso about. You don't need to glue their arms. I've glued my arms, and I've glued this chain cleaver in place as well because I wanted it in that pose, but you don't have to do that. You don't have to glue the heads either. The carapace mounted weapons, they're great. You don't need to magnetize them. Although maybe if you don't want to lose the guns, it's probably best to do that. But these Warglaives, I've just put the melter guns on. The Helverins, I've put the heavy stubbers on just because I want it, anti-armor and a bit more shooty. You don't need to put any of the carapace things on, like the armor plates. So you can just leave them off and spray it metal, and then wash it or shade it and dry brush it, and then you're good to go to pick out all the detail. They're going to be quite straightforward to paint and get ready. This is the other one. I don't think I've glued this chain cleaver, so if I wanted it like that or wherever, I can do. So there you go. I mean, they're really nice little kits, like a shrunk down Imperial Knight, and definitely don't take too long to put together and to get ready, which is great for your Imperial Knight army. So what I'll do now is just show you some size comparisons. So you've seen them next to a Helverin. They are the same height exactly. There are some subtle differences between these and the Helverins in terms of the armor plates, the way that they work these out. The Warglaives have these kind of cog armor plates at the top and have like a spear symbol with a skull, whereas the Helverins have more of a traditional kind of triangle with two spears either side on their armor plates, and the same goes for the armor plates there. I don't know why they've done this. I don't know why there's more of a cog symbol on the Warglaives. Someone help me out in the comments for that, but I would have preferred them to have all these armor plates on the because then they would have just matched the Castellan and the normal Imperial Knights. I don't know why they went in this direction for the Warglaives. It sucks a little bit because I would have liked to have had them all uniformed, but there we go. That's the size of them compared to the Helverin. They're the same height. Next to an Imperial Knight, I've just got an errant here. So as you can see, definitely probably 2/3 the height or so, or more than half the height of a Imperial Knight. And then next to a Castellan, we'll just put the Castellan over here, which is the tallest Imperial Knight, not including the Porphyrion obviously and things like that. But yeah, they're probably, they're not, there's not double, but there's probably 1.5 height for a Castellan. So that just gives you some idea. Next to some Imperial units, we've got a little Space Marine here, barely reaches up to the knee. Primaris fares a bit better, just past the knee. And then Contemptor Dreadnought, Would give it a run for its money, I think. Definitely nice little melee action going on there. So they're all the size comparisons. I hope that helps in discovering the size. So even the smallest Imperial Knights, these Warglaives, are a fair bit taller than a normal Dreadnought, and Dreadnoughts used to be pretty big. So now what I'll do is I'll just go through all of the rules for these models, of which there is something slightly different from the Forgebane kit. So you'll find them in your brand new 8th edition Warhammer 40,000 Imperial Knight Codex. They are the second choice after the Helverins. They're a power points cost of a 9 and a match play points cost of 160 points per model. Then you're going to have to buy their heavy stubber, or in this case the melter gun, which is 17 points, which is quite pricey actually. But that bumps them up to 177 points. Then you're going to have to buy their thermal spear, which luckily is free, per chain cleaver, which is also free. So for these models each, they're going to set you back 177 points or 164 points with the heavy stubbers. Their stat line is exactly the same as the Armiger Helverin, no difference whatsoever. They are a type of unit which their remaining wounds affect their characteristics. So they start off with 12 wounds, but if they've got between 7 and 12, their movement speed is 14 inches, a weapon skill 3+, and a ballistic skill of 3+. When their wounds drop to between 4 and 6, their movement drops to 10 inches, weapon skill is 4+, ballistic skill 4+, and finally when they've only got between 1 and 3 wounds, their movement speed is 7 inches, and their weapon skill and ballistic skill drop all the way down to 5+. Their base strength is a 6, their toughness is a 7, they do have 12 wounds each, and they have a decent number of attacks with 4, their leadership is 8, and they have a save of 3+. Like all the other Imperial Knights, they do have an iron shield to protect them against ranged weaponry in the form of a 5+ invulnerable save. So you're not going to get any invulnerable saves in close combat, like with all the other Imperial Knights, but it's a nice thing to have against higher damage, higher strength weaponry that they will attract. The unit contains one Armiger Warglaive, so you can just have one bobbing about, but you can include one additional Warglaive or 2 additional Warglaives, and each Warglaive is equipped with a Reaper chain cleaver, a thermal spear and a heavy stubber. So heavy stubber, I'll just go through that. I have done in all the other videos. It's a 36-inch range weapon, heavy 3-shot, strength 4, AP 0 and damage 1. Melter guns are 12 inches, assault 1, strength 8, AP -4 and a damage of D6, and obviously if they're within half the range, you've got to be really close at 6 inches, then you get 2d6 and discard the lowest. But the main reason you're going to get these is the thermal spear and the Reaper chain cleaver. It's not one or the other, it's definitely both of them. They are very good weapons. The thermal spear is a 30-inch range weapon. It's assault D3, so statistically you're going to get 2 or more shots. It's a strength 8, AP -4, damage D6, and again, because it's melter, if you're 15 inches or less away from an enemy, you're going to be rolling the 2d6 for your damage, which is fantastic. Effective range then of 29 inches, well 34 inches total, but if you're within 29 inches of an enemy model, you're going to be laying the smack down, which is a long distance, 29 inches to be fair. You're going to be laying the smack down with that extra d6 damage. To then disregard, if that makes sense. So the thermal spear is brilliant. It's a lovely 30-inch melter weapon. It's not a multi-melter. It's got the potential of having 3 shots, and it's a nice range weapon. Which brings me on to the Reaper chain cleaver. Now this time the weapon has 2 profiles, and when you attack you can choose one of them. So it's got a strike attack, which is similar to what it had in Forgebane kit. It's a melee attack obviously, and the strength times by 2, so you're getting strength 12, AP -3 and damage 3. So typically when you're going up against stronger units, other knights, models with higher toughness, that's what you're going to be wanting to use, the strike attack, where you've got strength 12, 4 attacks of strength 12. However, it does have a new attack called sweep. It's going to be the strength of the user, which still isn't too bad, strength 6, it's pretty good. The AP again isn't too bad at -2, still enough to get through a lot of other enemies' shields and armour. And the damage is only 1 though, but you make 2 hit rolls for each attack made with this weapon instead of 1. Now that's where it changes the game a bit, because you're getting 2 rolls for each attack. You've got 4 attacks, you've now got 8 attacks. So it gives it more of an effective fighting capability against more horde armies. I'm not talking about 20 orc boys rush in and charge this thing. I'm not talking about 30 Hormagaunts or Termagants or whatever. I'm just talking about, you know, 10 or 20 Imperial Guard or, you know, 10 Space Marines or something like that. It just gives it more of a fighting chance. Not saying that after 2 or 3 turns it's not going to wipe them all out. It might not. But it's definitely better than having just those 4 attacks. But you've definitely got to be mindful of how strong or how weak your enemy is if they do charge this, or if you charge them, because I think these models, these units are great against their capturing objectives and harassing enemy armour and elite units with decent armour too. So they're the 2 profiles in this melee attack, and they didn't have to do it because the normal Imperial Knights, they don't have a sweep mode, sweep profile. They just have Titanic feet. That's kind of like their version. They make 3 hit rolls with every attack with their Titanic feet. So it's nice that Games Workshop have had another look and have given them this. It's a shame that the Helverins are, you know, more redundant now, that they don't have a similar thing with their little feet, but at least they make up for it with the 60-inch range autocannons. Anyway, the Walkie Options, as I said before, you can replace those heavy stubbers with melter guns, which I have done, and I probably strongly suggest you do that because you want them up close and personal, trying to use that thermal spear, trying to use that Reaper chain cleaver. The abilities I mentioned before, they have iron shields, so that gives them a 5+ invulnerable save, and they do explode. So each time the model in the unit is reduced to 0 wounds, you roll a dice before removing it from the battlefield, and on a 6 it explodes, and each unit within 6 inches suffers D3 mortal wounds. So it's not as horrific as the normal Imperial Knights, like the Paladins and even the Castellans and things, but it's nice that it still explodes and you can inflict some mortal wounds when it blows up. Vehicle Squadron, this is another ability that kind of limits it though. First time the unit is set up, all of its models must be placed within 6 inches of each other, and from that point onwards, each operates independently and is treated as a separate unit. So that limits it a bit. You know, if you're having 2 or 3 of them, you have to set them up all together, but there aren't any blast templates anymore, so they're not going to be completely bombarded at least. And then finally, the keywords: Imperium, Imperial Knights, Questor, Allegiance, Household, Vehicle, Armiger Class, Armiger Warglaive. So they're all of the profiles, and that's the whole data sheet for the model. I think they're really cool. I've always wanted little knights or little Imperial Knights, and we've got them. I like the backstory that they're kind of slaved to a normal household knight, and that they can rise up the ranks as well. I like that. I like the fact that they'll support the Imperial Knights in combat. It's really cool that they've got the same save as an Imperial Knight and the same iron shield. I would have thought their iron shield would be, well, worse in some ways. And I think that their weapons are very capable, especially the Helverins with that long range, but these guys too. 30-inch melter weapons, and the chain cleavers now with the sweep attack, even more useful in close combat. So why would you choose them over the Helverins? Well, it depends on the battlefield. If the battlefield isn't, is quite closed in, lots of scenery, you haven't got nice long line of sight to enemy units, probably you're against an army that isn't horde based and has got very few units, like a Custodes army or something like that, with high armour and high points cost units, then it's probably better to go for these Warglaives over the Helverins, because their potency of their weapons is much higher strength, higher damage potential, whereas the Helverins are mainly long range, and the weapons just don't have that strength and armour penetration that these Warglaives have. So I hope that helps you make up your mind in a kind of game battle situation. But I'd like to hear what you guys think. Which do you prefer out of the Warglaives and the Helverins, especially in a battle scenario, and from a model point of view too? Please do put all your comments below as always. Thank you ever so much for joining me today. Thank you for watching. The Emperor Protects.